Hey Husker fans, Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald and Husker Extra. This is our Husker recruiting update for the week of May 7th on the defense. All right, let's get to the team rankings really quickly. This week, Nebraska is 24th in On3, 30th in 247 composite, and 33rd in rivals. Remember that On3 is a little bit higher than the rest because they only grade the top 6 commits, and so you're not going to get credit for having 14 commits. If you're some group of 5 team, you won't get the same amount of credit for that. You're only going to get credit for the top 6. So Nebraska's top 6 is better in many cases than some of the teams that might be ahead of it in the 247 and rivals system. That's why there's a disparity in the rankings. Nebraska got a commit last week from Keelan Smith. Now, he could end up on the defensive side of the ball, but he does play wide receiver and tight end for Liberty North High School. If he were to end up on the defensive side of the ball, well, he would be awfully interesting in that sort of jack linebacker role. He's 6'3", 205 now. He'd obviously have to put on weight. He'd have to get up to about 225, 230, somewhere in there in order to play that role. But don't count it out because he's probably going to have to get to that weight to play a tight end role on the offensive side of the ball anyway. Nebraska's defensive recruiting, I think it's just going to be a work in progress. First of all, Nebraska signed a bunch of young guys on the defensive side of the ball, and they added a bunch of transfers on that side of the ball. So when you think about that, they've got a lot of young players in that system. They've got a lot of young defensive backs, obviously a lot of relatively young linebackers still, guys that they signed a couple of years ago, plus guys they just added. I mean, Chief Borders isn't an old guy. Then they added a bunch of young defensive linemen. Now, some people don't necessarily see them as defensive linemen, but they're clearly defensive linemen. Cam Lenhart and Princewell Umanyalan and Kai Wallen, all those guys are going to play on the defensive line. And so Nebraska added a bunch of guys last year that they're going to begin the process of developing this fall. So I think you have to watch just to see exactly who they want to bring in, what kinds of players they want to bring in at some of those positions. Obviously, they got McGahee's kid who's going to play at linebacker. So he's already in the class, but it won't surprise me if Nebraska really tries to be thoughtful and judicious about recruiting a number of these positions for the 2024 class on the defensive side of the ball. We'll know more, I think, in a week or two about what they want to do in that official visit, but positions that I'm kind of watching for is you're always looking for an elite defensive lineman, but those aren't easy to get. Those are hard. You're always looking for an elite cornerback, but those aren't easy to get. Those are hard. But Nebraska's done a pretty good job of getting some good corners. And then you're always looking for really, really good safety players who can kind of do multiple things. And so those will be positions that I'm watching from Nebraska. I do think they have a number of linebackers. I think they've got a number of guys in their system already who are pretty good at that. They've got to decide if the young guys they have, Makai Bayer, the Randolph Kapai, the Seth Malcolm, if those guys are the future, or if they want to try to bring in some younger guys underneath that wave as they work through Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich, who are older, and Jay Sherman's a little older too. So we'll know more, I think, in a week or two about Nebraska's defensive recruiting for the month of June. We'll talk more about camps next week, and we'll kind of get into what Nebraska exactly wants to do as it goes into the next phase of its recruiting strategy. All right, Husker fans, I'm Sam McKewon for the Omaha World-Herald and Husker Extra.